Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today. This is Pi Gamma Mu's third event in our new speaker series. Today, our event is featuring Dr. Laura Rodriguez-Kitkowski of South University in Georgia. My colleague on the board of Pi Gamma Mu, Allison Knox, will introduce Dr. Rodriguez-Kitkowski in a few minutes, but I would first like to tell you a little bit about Pi Gamma Mu and about this speaker series. Pi Gamma Mu was founded in 1924 and is the oldest and preeminent interdisciplinary social science honor society. The mission of Pi Gamma Mu is to encourage and promote excellence in the social sciences and to uphold and nurture scholarship, leadership, and service. Pi Gamma Mu serves the various social science disciplines which seek to understand and explain human behavior and social relationships, as well as their related problems and issues. Currently, there are around 150 active chapters in the United States and overseas. About this speaker series. Our speaker series started this year, and as I said earlier, this is our third event so far. The series is offered via Zoom to spotlight the research interests and expertise of Pi Gamma Mu's chapter sponsors. These faculty members will showcase their expertise as they discuss new and important themes in the social sciences. Our goal is to host 4 events each year. The first 2 presentations are available on our YouTube channel. On November 18th of 2022, Dr. Susan Kinsella, who is the president of Pi Gamma Mu and a former dean of the College of Education at St. Leo University, presented along with other experts on the topic of animal-assisted interventions. And that again is on our YouTube channel. And the second event on January 25th of this year, Dr. Joshua Weichert of Immaculata University spoke about the interplay between politics and public policy in legislatures. Both were very fascinating topics, and so be sure to check those out on YouTube. We're going to be recording this event today and posting it as well. Now I will hand it off to Kathy M., Pi Gamma Mu's first vice president, who has some updates to share with you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and greetings from Maryland Theta Chapter at the University of Maryland Global Campus. I want to take just a moment to let you know that Pi Gamma Mu will be holding its centennial celebration next year in Philadelphia. Pi Gamma Mu holds a convention every 3 years where we feature the research of our student members and the activities of all of our chapters. We also hold elections for our board of trustees, including the election of 2 student trustees who work alongside the board. The convention is a place for the sharing of ideas, networking with other social scientists, and really just making new friends. We also have a phenomenal leadership institute that takes place during the convention where participants hear about leadership opportunities in a variety of settings and disciplines. The 2024 convention will be held from November 1st through 3rd, again in Philadelphia, and we encourage everyone to come and meet us in the city of brotherly love. We're especially excited because we'll be honoring Pi Gamma Mu alumni Emily Welty and Matthew Bolton from Pace University, who did their work on the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, or ICAN, and that project was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. Both Drs. Welty and Bolton will be accepting the Distinguished Alumni Award in person. So this is really your chance to meet with some international superstars who are working to make the world a safer place. Another exciting development is that we are writing a book on the first 100 years of Pi Gamma Mu. What is really exciting about this is that you and your chapter can contribute to this effort by sharing your chapter histories. And I'm going to just quickly put a link in the chat. So this is the link to the history project, and it doesn't matter what contributions you can make, big or small. We're inviting everyone to contribute documents, pictures, narratives, other artifacts to include in our book. So if you have something to contribute or your chapter does, please help us by sending your information to that online form, or you can send it to my email address, which I'll type in just a moment. And we'll be sending out more information in the weeks and months to come. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allison Knox, Regional Chancellor for the Southeast region, who will introduce today's guest speaker.
Thank you, Kathy. We're absolutely delighted to have Laura Rodriguez-Kitkowski speaking to us today. I'm actually really excited about this because her lecture will be our third in the speaker series. We are still accepting applications for next year if you're interested. I'm going to put my email address at the bottom, and I can tell you about our proposal process and what we're looking for in terms of that. But for today's lecture, we have Dr. Rodriguez-Kitkowski, who is a professor at South University and serves as the program director for the Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. She also has her own practice specializing in depression, suicide, bipolar, dual diagnosis, substance abuse, eating disorders, and human sexuality. But Dr. Rodriguez-Kitkowski will be talking about managing stress today. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak in our speaker series. And with that, I will pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Allison. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is a very warm day in Michigan. I'm actually in Michigan, even though our Georgia chapter, obviously, that's our Savannah, Georgia is our main campus. But I'm actually residing in Michigan, and it's very, very hot. So the hum in the background is a fan going, so I hope it doesn't bother anyone. I am so happy to be here. I think that the topic of stress is near and dear to my heart. I think the concept of I know, I do talk with my hands, so you're going to see a little bit of that. I also am originally from Texas, so you got a lot of the y'alls that might spin out. But the concept of I know, we are usually in our profession, in the counseling profession, psychology, we're taught, don't say that. That's not always the best thing to say. I think in this kind of a topic, we are all able to say, I know about stress. I know because I've experienced it. And I would also venture to say that many of us are experts in this area, especially with the multiple hats that we typically wear today. My challenge to you is really to look at yourself as I walk through slides. I tried to put more pictures. I tried to capture kinds of elements, and I'll try and talk through those. We will absolutely have a Q&A at the end if you'd like to. But bottom line is, look at yourself, use your judgment. Use your judgment. And I'm going to say that one more time. Use your judgment, because my three might be different than yours in terms of what goes into our brain. And more importantly, we don't need Mr. and Mrs. Google, if you will. We need to figure out us and where we reside and what we need. And what I need might be similar to you in terms of stress and navigating through crisis, but it also might be different. And so we need to remember that. A little bit more about me too. I have 4 boys, believe it or not. I have 2 boys from a second relationship. They are 35 and 32. And then an 18-year-old who is about to graduate high school. And dear Lord, talk about stress. That's a fun one, but good. He's graduating summa cum laude, so I'm so proud of him. And he got a scholarship to Northern Michigan. So we are on our way to Marquette soon, and I'm very excited about that. And then we have a 14-year-old, and he is just this amazing joy, just brings so much joy to my life, all of the kids. And we have 2 grandkids, 7 and 5. And so we are a family of boys, and it's all fun. I think I would have more stress to speak about in that regard if I had girls. But that's why my sister always says, that's why God gave you boys. And I think that's true. Okay. I do have notes because I want to kind of follow a couple of pieces. So why are we talking about stress? Well, there's lots of reasons. And this is kind of the overview of what I want to be speaking to. I want to talk about the crisis that's going on right now, not just with adolescents, but with adults as well. And you saw that concept of resilient coping. The concept of resiliency is something that we need to look at. And in academia today, I know it's a big deal. I absolutely know. There's something called ARC. If you're not aware of it, ARC is the Academic Resiliency Consortium, and that is dedicated to resources, abundant resources on resiliency. So that's something that I want to kind of plug too, because it's an important thing for many of us and our students as well, and frankly, ourselves. But in talking, why are we talking about it? We definitely want to look at that crisis that's going on. Forgive the typical concepts, but stress has some typical definitional components. So we want to look at definition. We want to look at the response. We want to look at the types of stress and remind ourselves what fight and flight is. We want to look at stressors. And as we look at them, I'm going to challenge you to really look at what really resonates with me. Ask yourself that question. What makes sense for me in terms of those common stressors, as well as the symptoms? Your symptoms may be different than mine. Your stress may be exciting for me and vice versa. So we want to look at that. Equally, we're going to talk a little bit about vulnerability. And actually, I shouldn't say a little bit. It's all about vulnerability when you think about it. So you'll look at a little bit of that and see a little bit of that. We're going to talk about coping. We'll talk about the various strategies that are there. Obviously, the strategies that are not so great that many of us can practice as well. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Doesn't mean you're bad, and it doesn't mean you have to slap your hand, but it does mean you have to be aware, especially when your stress is not able to be controlled by yourself anymore. We'll talk about mindset. Mindset's huge, 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 huge. We'll talk about relaxation. There are elements of stress management that I want to highlight. And of course, the typical concepts of what's healthy out there, what habits can you practice that are more healthy? So why stress? Why judgment? I remember my students asking me, I said, okay, everybody, what's judgment? And they'll say, well, Dr. Laura, we're not supposed to have judgment and blah, blah, blah. Carl Rogers tells us, well, hang on. No, Carl Rogers says, don't be judgmental. But in fact, we need to use our judgment. We need to use our judgment. We need to understand what's going on. We need to give it life and form. So we do need to use our judgment. And it's really critical to use our judgment. Why now? The long and short is this. Ask yourself what worked for you a year ago? What worked for you 2 years ago? And I'll say it kind of differently. What worked for you in terms of coping pre-pandemic? What worked for you post-pandemic? My guess is they may be different. At least that's what the research is telling us. We've got to look at coping and massage it. We've got to get the clay, the Play-Doh, and make sure it makes sense for us today. We got to look and give it form in a different way. So why stress? Why judgment? Why now? Because it's real and it is different. And frankly, it morphs all the time. I can't not put this on the slide, on a slide. We have crisis. We have a massive crisis. Almost 50% of our adolescents and a high 40% of our adults have crisis-driven behaviors, have crisis-driven thoughts. We have mental health issues up the yin-yang. We have a great disparity when it comes to accessing resources. One of the things we're doing on our QEP at South University is all about resilience, because we need to give people tools. We need to help them understand that we understand they're struggling. The crisis goes well above beyond mental health tags, if you will, mental health labels, if you will. It goes beyond that because in reality, it's dealing with real life. The things that worked for us, as I said in the past, to cope are different today. They don't work anymore. How come I can't just take my 5-minute break and be okay and regenerated? How come I can't just drink a glass of water and feel rejuvenated? How come I can't have my favorite tea anymore? And it used to make sense for me. Well, because we're changing. There are many reasons why we're changing as well. What worked before may not work now. Why? Because our experiences have increased in certain stressors. Our experiences with trauma have increased. Our experiences with complex trauma, that's a big buzzword now too, have increased. Frankly, for some of us, age. It's something too that we have to deal with when we're talking about looking at adult development, when we're looking at elder development, because those anxieties are there as well. So adolescent crisis is a part, adult crisis is a part, and then you see my little flower there on the bottom. And that little flower, those are the 5 components of resiliency. Resiliency is a Venn diagram, and it's always morphing and changing. It's a beautiful kaleidoscope. And there are times where self-awareness, purpose, mindfulness, relationships, and self-care, those little guys, they are just blooming. They're beautiful. And there are times where they're so tight because we're not sure how to do stuff. So when you look at crisis, when you look at these components, you want to pay attention to what's happening in my life, what's happening in others' life that are important to me, what's happening across those 5 elements of resiliency. What's stress? Oh goodness, I could say, hey, all people on the call, tell me your definition, tell me your definition, tell me your definition. And I would almost guarantee, yeah, there'll be similarities. Of course there'll be similarities. It's a change. We look at stress as, oh my gosh, it's change. Yeah, the only certain thing we have in life is change. So guess what? We're gonna have stress. You could say to me, well, gosh, you know what? It's my body's reaction to something. Of course it is. Absolutely, definitely agree. It's my perception on something. Absolutely, definitely agree. But the problem with all of those things is, well, it's not really a problem. The uniqueness of those things is it's what you think stress is. That's important. It's what you think stress is. If we got a general, I'm going to look at my notes here. If we got a general consensus of what it is, a condition or feeling experienced when a person perceives that demands exceed the personal and social resources that they are able to utilize. That can be a form, but what is it really, y'all? It is my 911 system. It's a way to say, hey, this isn't working. Hey, something's going on. Please stop. Listen, help. All of that stuff is there. And it's up to you to be able to listen to it. It's up to you to be able to use those elements of resiliency so that you can say, okay, positive relationship person, I need to talk to you for a few minutes. Okay, mindfulness, I need to slow down for a minute. Okay, purpose, I have to work on this project for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Okay, purpose, go grab a glass of water so I can slow myself down. Okay, self-awareness, I've got to be able to say, you know what? I just have to breathe right now, whatever it might be. And if you notice too, it also has to do with your internal piece. What's going on internally? Slow your voice down. My students always tell me, and patients too, it's going to be slow down is going to be on your gravestone, they always say, because that's kind of my go-to. It's like, slow down, hang on, slow down. I say that to my kids all the time. It's very important. So what did all of that mean? All of that means that there's no true overall encompassing definition of stress. No true one. It's really up to you how you define it. And on here, one of the things that's important is to illuminate the anxiety versus stress. Anxiety can incorporate certainly stress, but stress in and of itself is that response. It can also be very reactive. It can be positive and negative, and we'll see that in a second. But anxiety, that's that internal reaction. And a couple of things I wanted to illuminate here too. Anxiety can be ongoing. Anxiety can be constant. Anxiety can be there even when there's nothing immediate, as a threat. Whereas stress, once you're done with that stressor, if you will, you got yourself back together. So we want to look at those pieces and we want to understand them. The nice thing when I look at stress, though, is it can help you react and it can help you respond. And anybody who remembers that difference, what is the difference between response and reaction? Response, you're using your head. Reaction, boom, it comes out. So in that response period, your mindset's very, very important. And we're going to talk about that in a minute too. In this particular slide, I want to illuminate positive stress and then distress. Positive stress can be anything like, okay, I willingly am starting a new job. I willingly am buying a new home, very stressful, but I am willingly having a child. I am willingly adopting my child. I am willingly going to move. I am willingly going on a holiday. I am willingly traveling, etc. Those are great stressors. I just came back from Cancun. It was a little stressful, but wow, that was awesome. And it was so much fun. And the lines to get into customs, oh dear. But you know what? Okay, get my stamp. I'm ready to go. Get me on the beach. So it was a stress, but it was also amazing. Of course, we have distress. When we have distress, we're looking at the negative piece. It can be an acute piece. Okay, got it. Episode done. But it can also be, ugh, this stuff's there and it's lingering and it's lingering and it's lingering. Sometimes that chronic stress is very much tied with that complex stress. It's also tied to grief. It's also tied to, I just don't get it. And that we have to define. A lot of patients of mine, I don't get it. I get what you're saying. Let's try to define that. So chronic stress is really, it's erupting many times. The fight or flight, I tried to pick some stressful pictures, if you will, but in this fight or flight one, I love the zombie because the zombie piece is the paralysis. And truly, we can fight, we can fly, but the reality is we've got this, uh-oh, now what? And that's the zombie in us. And all of us have likely have experienced that. All of us have likely said to ourselves, oh dear, I don't know how to get out of this. And sometimes you just got to go to sleep and start a new day. But the zombie is the uncertainty, the paralysis, the powerlessness, and also peace out. It's an avoidance. So it's very, very real, very, very real. These are my little stress ones. This talks about the stress response. The typical one that we see, and these are right off of Google, but these are the typical ones that we see. Here's your fight, flight. Here's what really happens, what happens to your eyes, what happens to your, are you sweating? What's happening to your breathing, et cetera, to what's going on in terms of flight and energy and cortisol and all kinds of things. And then the one on the left, I thought was really cool because those of us who deal with children, your own, someone that maybe your students, those kinds of things, or just people that you know, they have a very fundamental zombie. So the freezing piece is an important one to illuminate. So I wanted to make sure I put that on there. And this is a school counseling one too, so I just loved it. So again, your typical fight flights, but the freezing one, they don't know what to do. They go and it's blank. So, and they really have difficulty completing tasks. Just last night, now granted, he's 18, he's not quite the child and the little kid, but I said to him, I go, listen, buddy, I got it that you got your senioritis, but you know what? You got to stop this freezing thing on me because we got to get through. And he's like, I got you, Mom. I got you. So it's one of those things where you're able to say, okay, grab the bull by the horns. I know you're frozen, but we got this. Fight, flight, good stuff. Common stressors. I think you can look at this, at least the first one, and say, oh yeah, got that one. Personal, family, work, environment. Those are the four primary categories that you're going to see anywhere and all. They're everywhere. One of the things I like to illuminate is the social readjustment scale. And the social readjustment scale is 0 to 100. I think 100 is divorce or is it death of a child? I can't remember, but bottom line is there's that. And then the 0 is like, oh, I'm good. I just planted my flowers. Although I'm not sure because I think Katie and I would agree that that's not always a good one. The other thing that I want you to kind of think about, those of us who might be clinicians or no clinicians, the psychosocial stressors, there are 8 of them. They are still very much alive. And when we deal with resiliency, we got to look at what's going on with people and their psychosocial stressors. Do they have insurance? Do they have access to transportation? Do they have money? Do they have a job? So there's some fundamentals there. Do they have a social network that they can go to in terms of support? So it's very real. Major life events, there are many, and you will have life events. That's normal. All of us have experienced major life events in the last couple of years with the pandemic. So again, major life events are there. Trauma can be defined in various ways. Again, occupational, socioeconomic, nutritional. Let's say that you just found out you have celiac disease. We got to change things up. Let's say you just got diagnosed with lupus. Okay, we got to change things up, but that can create that stress. Substance abuse. Those of you living with people who that have some substance abuse, those of you that perhaps have experienced it yourself, it's very challenging, and it can be really overwhelming and very, very stressful. So all in all of the above that we just covered is all stress all the time, 100%. And what that means is if you could identify with 1, 2, 3, 10 things that I've said so far, then one of the things that you should be saying is, I have vulnerability to stress. And I would say, yes, we all have fundamental normal pieces of ourselves, and that is vulnerability in and of itself. There are checklists. There are checklists that you can download. You can score yourself. If you say this from a Likert scale of 1 to 5, if you say this, score 2, score 3, score 4, and then add them all up. And you know what? I don't need a checklist to tell me that I'm stressed. I do, however, need to practice resiliency and those 5 components of resiliency so that I'm constantly in check with what can I do differently. So as I continue, I'm going to challenge you. I want you to think as I'm talking, because I'm going to go into coping in a few minutes. And I said at the beginning, resilient coping, right? Resilient coping. So 5 components of resiliency, right? Get your flower going. And I want to challenge you to think about some things that I'm saying and which ones can apply to you. Which one makes sense for you? Which one can work for you? Which ones, notice I said ones, write them down. Maybe they're new. Maybe you can look at them differently and practice them differently. So that's my challenge to you as I continue. When we look at symptoms, these symptoms, again, I got your challenge there, right? These symptoms are from an HR site, believe it or not. And I just loved it. I mostly loved it because of the last one, because I hear people with the collapse of belief systems more often than I can tell you. Where is God? How come I'm so cynical now? So I loved this particular one. The first little box talks about physical reactions. What is happening? Am I too tired? Am I constipated? Am I almost experiencing IBS? Yes. Can I go to the bathroom? Can I not? Do I have headaches? Am I sleeping oddly? Emotional. Am I more anxious? Am I guilty? Am I mood swinging? Do I have apathy? Am I crying? Am I just immobile? Do I have a lot of nightmares? Am I nervous? Am I scared? Mental, cognitive reactions. Am I forgetting things? Am I not able to concentrate? Is my performance at my job not so good? Am I doing a lot of negative self-talk? Am I getting paranoid? These are very real, and these can tap into all of us on some level. Interpersonal, relational. Am I feeling isolated? Am I going to isolate? Am I being more antisocial? Am I withdrawing? Do I have problems in my marriage or my relationship? Am I more lonely? Am I resentful? These are huge. I can guarantee just this morning with 2 or 3 people that I saw, we were talking about these fundamentally, because the stress that impacts someone really gets into, I just don't want to be around anybody. But that's not practicing that personal relationship, the resiliency flower. That's not practicing mindfulness. That's not really practicing self-awareness. I did say practicing. I didn't say anyone was expert. The next one, behavioral. Am I drinking more? Am I using drugs? Am I smoking? Am I super hyperactive? Am I cynical? Am I avoiding certain situations? Am I changing my sexual behaviors? Am I increasing risky behaviors? Those are very real, some good behavioral ones. The next one, again, the reason I wanted this slide. Do you have challenges to your belief system? And I love the way they put it, collapse of your belief system. I know when I lost, my husband and I had two children who were stillbirths many, many years ago. And I remember going, this is so wrong. How is this possible? And where is God? And I was angry and I didn't want to believe in anything anymore. And I remember going through that going, oh my gosh. But what was so cool about it was I learned this phrase, and my kids actually adopt it today. I'm not good. I'm not even great right now, but guess what? I am okay, because that collapse happened for a period of time and it was not sustainable for me. I love life. And so that's not sustainable for me, but man, did I experience it. So that's an important one. Do you have a loss of a purpose? And guess what? Rejuvenating that can be really cool. So I love this framework and I thought I'd share that with you. Now I'll go into coping. I had forgotten I put that slide in there. Sorry about that, y'all. What is coping? Coping can be many, many, many different things, but they're tactics. They're tactics that we use. Sometimes people cope just with use of metaphors, believe it or not. Sometimes people cope by listening to their favorite lyrics, let's say. Sometimes people cope by playing an instrument. I play the French horn and I would just play. I don't care if it's a scale. I don't care if it's just notes. It's chill. It's just this, everybody go away. Let me be in my space for a moment. And that's not a negative. That's actually a positive, because that's my way of coping. So it can be many, many things. Alliteration. People love to do alliteration. Creativity, any and all forms of creativity. One of the cool things about coping too, that I want to kind of put in your head first, is the 4 A's. The 4 A's. 1, avoid. 2, alter. 3, accept. 4, adapt. You could Google that in a millisecond, but I'll tell you this, how you play with those 4 A's is a whole different ballgame. And the other thing with coping is that power of P. And what the heck is P? It's positivism. And that sounds a little cheesy. I gotcha. It may sound a little cheesy, but positivism is huge, because we know that there is a link. There's a very significant relationship with meaning, your meaning, how you put meaning to something, and positivism. And they're very, very in tune with one another, and they mesh beautifully with one another. So it's a good thing. And lastly, one of the things that you want to look at when you talk about coping is my immune system. What's happening with my immune system? And I'm going to give you a resource at the very end, and it'll make some sense too. There is the science of psychoneuroimmunology. And what is that? That is the science of all the psychological factors that go into the changes of our immune system. And it's amazing when we're positive, how our immune system is pretty cool, and how when we're negative, we get into the pit, and that pit of despair is not fun. And we get sick. And then, I don't care how many airbornes you take, the airbornes are not going to fix it. So it's real. It's very, very real. So look at the coping strategies on the screen right now. Physiological, cognitive, behavioral, emotional. These coping strategies, and we'll get to the little red box in a minute, but these little coping strategies are fundamental to figuring out what's going to work for me right now. Notice what I just said. What's going to work for me right now? Because right now is what counts, not in the future. And a way to look at that, again, read through, But a way to look at that is if you have a continuum of life, and this is right now, and this is my past, and this is my future. I cannot really dip into the past too much. I cannot really dip into the future too much. I got to stay here. So dipping into the past, dipping into the future isn't always going to do me well. I can plan, I can remember, but I got to be here. I got to massage this. And massaging this is using that physiological, that behavioral, that cognitive. The physiological piece, if you literally just used your hands and put one on your chest and one on your stomach and started breathing and started feeling your diaphragm and started listening to that, you would start controlling some of that breathing. You do need to learn how to do that, but that helps immensely. And when you get all your senses going, you're listening, you're feeling, the touch, all of these little elements start helping you. You get in front of a mirror even, you got your sight going, and you're tapping into you because you are your best resource, guaranteed. Diet, exercise, relaxation, walk outside, look at change, and change isn't always bad. Behavioral, acting relaxed. How odd is that? One of my patients is an actor, former patients. And I'm telling you, he used to say, you know what? That was the best practice I had. And it was so awesome. He actually worked with a really high-end person and Leonardo DiCaprio, believe it or not. And he said he taught him how to act relaxed. And I thought that was so cool because the bottom line is you have to be able to get into that part of yourself that knows what relaxation means, because your definition and my definition might slightly vary, but it all works. But you got to change your behavior slowly in this space, in here and now. And you got to be assertive about that. And it takes time to build that. Cognitive, emotional. We're going to change things. You got to figure out how to positively think. Look at that self-awareness. It should be part of your little flower. That's part of the little flower of resiliency. Those are real. Those are awesome. Those are important. Look at the unhealthy one. When you're not sleeping great, we already said that one. When you're lacking exercise, we sort of said that one. When you're using drugs and alcohol to try and calm down, it doesn't work. When you've got too much caffeine, when you've got too much sugar, when you're not eating well, or when you're skipping meals, those are all unhealthy coping strategies. Another way to look at coping, and this is one of my favorite slides that I think I continued, it's from a Feist book, a Psych 101 book, so a general psychology book, and it's McGraw-Hill. And I love this one because it really does get the visual and the words together. There are 3 types of coping that we look at. So problem-focused, emotion-focused, and social support-focused. And when you look at this, the last one is almost your better bet, if you will, because it's kind of combining the first 2. And it gives you that nice little example. So here you have a problem. To solve the problem, you got to seek the support for it. You got to take assertive action. So, oh my gosh, these people are so loud. My roommate, excuse me, is so loud. So I have to figure out how, I can't go and just, cut their speaker wires. It's not my best option. That's a really scary sight, but some people do that. Bottom line is we've got to look at the right thing to do, if you will. Emotion focused. Let's say there's a breakup. We've got to focus on how am I going to feel better? Do I just escape? What's good for me? What's not? What self-control am I using? What am I not? What disclosure am I going to use? And the last, in terms of combining both so that you can come up with something that is conscientious. You are really connected to who you are and getting advice from people that you trust potentially. Support groups are fantastic also for coping. I'm guessing people already know that. But you also have to have a support group that really makes sense for you. So that's a good way to look at coping as well. There's a lot on this slide. I absolutely know that. I borrowed this from Write. It's actually write.edu. My apologies, not .com. Write.edu. This is all about mindsets. Mindsets can be across several domains. We are looking at elements that you see in terms of confidence and creating goals, communicating, positive attitudes, physical health. And if you notice the way each one of these areas is speaking to, we're looking at, and forgive as I scroll with my mouse, but this, okay, people, positive feelings, got it. Okay, how about I challenge rather than see them as a threat? But then it's also giving you that little question. How can you increase your confidence? What can you do to increase your confidence? Here, what do I do to accept personal responsibility? When we do that, it's really hard because that kind of admits I might be making an error, but it also can admit I might be doing something right. So when we look at that, you want to look at a piece and make sure that you're illuminating. Same thing, when might be a time I can do this? How might I increase clarity and expectations of my own goals? What do I have to state more clearly? What do I have to do to increase better health? Another way to look at things is self-management. And I had to put this up there because we did a project one time, some kids in a group, and we talked about bottles and different emotions, and they got to fill up colored sand. It's something that many people do, I think, in play therapy. But bottom line is, when you have fear, there can be black sand, and you can put that in there, and you choose the bottle, and you decorate it and what have you, but you have to put that label on it. But these bottles, they also represent bottling up things. We don't necessarily need that. We need to pour the sand out. And that's also part of the therapy that we do. But in stress management, we got to learn to say no. I have a colleague, Dr. Eugene and Autumn did such a fantastic job in an Around the Water Cooler series that we did in our department, and just really illuminated why it's important to say no. And it is important to say no. You don't want buttons being pushed all the time. You don't want to have this ridiculous stress environment. Altering a situation, not bottling up things, that's where you're managing your time better. You alter a situation to manage your time better. Adapting to stressors, you got to reframe, refocus, making time for fun. This morning, I had a 2 hour, an hour and a half block before I started with my patients this morning. I went and got my flowers because you know what? It's nice out. I want my flowers. And so I had time. Why not? I also think making time for fun can be in the form of practicing grace, practicing forgiveness, sharing, connecting. These are good things. When we have a lack of connection, when we have an inability to hear things, that illuminates stress. It blooms, and it in a negative way. Not really blooms, it actually is more hurricane. Diet. With diet, stress friendly, eat good, eat fresh, get a variety, eat slowly. My brother, my younger brother, who is just the most favorite person and human being in the world to me, besides my family and children, but my younger brother, 2 years younger, he had his A1C was at 14. Anyone who knows anything about diabetes should just go, what? Yeah, so did I. And he said, I got to do something different. I go, yup. He started eating slowly. He has lost 32 pounds just by eating slowly. And he has a little timer on his app. It's called Wonder. And his Blue Cross Blue Shield pays for it. And I'm like, dude, thank you. Thank you, because I love you too much. I want you in this world. So eating slowly, eating regularly, adding fun meals. When kids do the little fun meals and we make shapes out of things and their sandwiches are shapes and things like that. Fun meals can be fun. Get fun recipes going. Make things fun on a plate. Just because you're old doesn't mean you can't have fun. Stress aggravating, sugar. Sugar is one of the worst enemies that we have. And don't worry, we all do it every once in a while. It's when you do it all the time. Caffeine, alcohol, skipping meals, not always our best friends. This is one of my favorite things. I am stealing 13 ways from a presentation that I couldn't for the life of me find who it was, but this is not mine. And I will go through this with you very quickly, just to tell you, you can do things differently. You can pick things and go through things in ways that can make a difference, make a change, make just that little bit of a, oh, I found that different. I see that differently for myself. Again, it's up to you. 5-minute favors. When you practice these 13 ways, it's good stuff. A 5-minute favor. I might go drop off, I don't know, some donuts to my neighbor. I might do something small for someone. And today even, Kathy did something for Suzanne because it was just easier. So Suzanne didn't have to worry about something. So favors for people are always nice. Hide technology, put your phones away, put your tablets away for a day, half a day. Don't watch TV, don't sit in front of the TV too long. Take a lunch break. Oh my God, I'm the worst at that. But I love taking lunch breaks now. Again, I got my flowers this morning, so that was cool. Get moving. Some people that wear a Fitbit or other type of Apple Watch or what have you, or any kind of movement, that it can give you little reminders to say, hey, move it, get up, move, get back to nature, go for a walk, look outside even, just stare outside. I have a 3.5-acre pond outside my window, and I love just staring at it. I was telling Kathy that I was telling Suzanne that I stare at my hummingbirds because I love right outside my window. So it's getting into nature. Humor, watch a funny show, maybe get a comedian going, whatever humor for you. Reflect on little things. I love doing that. I have 2 mouthpieces on my desk that are my French horn mouthpieces. And I will literally reflect on the first day that my husband kissed me in high school. So I will reflect on something as silly as that. I will reflect on 211 and when we got the notification that the FCC approved. Those are good reflections. I will reflect on in San Francisco, when I look at the most crooked road in the world. I love reflection. It's so peaceful and so relaxing. Disappear for 15 minutes. Go to the bathroom. Just go to the bathroom. Nobody's going to bug you in there. And just breathe and just slow down. Just go to the bathroom. It's all good. Go disappear for 15 minutes. Nurture your artsy side. One of my patients found those trash cans that are the really old ones that are all metal, and she painted them. And then she sold them on whatever that site is. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the artsy one. And anyway, bottom line is she actually used her artsy side to relax, and then she sold and made money out of it. So that was pretty cool. Play with a pet. Play with a pet. Have fun with that. Create a comfort kit. A comfort kit might be a candle and a book and, I don't know, maybe a little thing of tea. Pamper yourself. I used to say, no, I can't afford to go get a pedicure, but you know what? Now I do. And I just build it in the budget if I can. Sometimes I can't. I have kids. But bottom line, that's a good one. Show gratitude. That is always nice. I am thankful for it. 13 ways. My most favorite, my most favorite, my most favorite. Relaxation. There are apps up the yin yang. I only put a few. So, there's Headspace. Some of my patients told me are pretty cool. But there's just apps all over the place. The yoga app, Happily, I think that's that one. The Calm app. There's so many cool ones out there. And just what's your pleasure? What's your pleasure? So apps can be really, really great. And frankly, all of these things are reminding us to take care of ourselves. All of these things are saying, make time to unwind. If your resiliency flower is so tight, unwind, let it bloom a little bit. Talk to someone, connect. Those are the things that we're trying to illuminate. So here's your flower again. And then there's other little elements too. But when we look at relaxation, when we look at resiliency, we want to be able to practice the ebb and flow of this flower. We want to be able to look at what is purposeful for me. What do I need to do to practice that mindfulness just a little bit deeper, maybe a little bit longer? And it doesn't mean you have to be an expert. There is no such thing. Absolutely no expert. But it does mean I can practice it and get better at it. It does mean, oh my gosh, I think I can meditate now. And that's hard, but people can do it. It does mean I can practice being with someone and understanding that commitment in a relationship. My son, one of my sons and I, we get up at really early. I get up at 4:30, he gets up at 5, and we talk in the morning, and he's about to go away for college. I'm gonna miss him so much. But I know because of that bond of our relationship, that's practicing a resilient self in him and myself, and we'll be able to still connect a little bit. And I'll beg him too, probably. But bottom line, it's a good thing. Self-care. What am I doing to help me? What am I doing? How much water am I drinking? And then I drink it in my sparkly glass. Dr. Gilston, my wonderful colleagues, gave this to me, and I just like love putting it on my desk because it makes me happy and it's all sparkly. And when the sun comes through, it really makes all these fun little sparkles on my ceiling. Self-awareness. What do I need? What do I need? I did not say want. What do I need to fulfill who I am? So practice the flower, practice the blooming of this flower. When it's tight, what do I need to do to get it a little bit blooming? And another thing that I put on here, what I really like, is the DBT piece. Truly being trained in DBT is really imperative, I think, because you really want to know what you're talking about if you're a clinician. However, when you can read the fundamentals of these 4 elements in terms of mindfulness, distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, and emotional regulation, you're able to really look at, what do I need to do here too? I still said need. And if you look at this, for example, with mindfulness, you are aware. When you look at emotional regulation, you have understanding. When you look at effectiveness, you set boundaries. All of this has to do with resiliency and relaxation. And forgive me as I'm rushing a tiny bit because I know we're almost out of time, but what are the takeaways? What have I learned? I really hope that you took away something, because there's always something. You can always learn something from someone. And really the big thing is practice resiliency. Look at your flower. Look at a metaphor that makes sense to you. Figure out what relaxes you, perhaps what music speaks to you. And then, as I said, I challenged you earlier, what 3 things can you do to apply to what your needs are, whether it's new, whether it's old? And then look at the differences between your old coping and your new coping. It might just have a little bit of a different flavor. Another thing is, I don't know if you noticed, but all the slides had a little mosaic on it. And people love to doodle, and the doodle arts are always a fun thing to do for a stress reduction. So that's kind of why I put that on there. And I tried to put one with lots of color on it as well. And lastly, I just wanted to kind of give you a couple of resources. So write.edu was one of the ones I absolutely love. It's a downloadable PDF. Some of the stuff that you saw in here is absolutely them. There are toolkits at the yin yang. If you have students that you guide, or if you're a student yourself, go to find your student assistance program. We are employees. We have employee assistance programs. Google the heck out of the top 10, top 99, top 100. So 99 coping skills, 101, ways to chill out. And one last one that I absolutely love is in 2008, there was an individual from Stanford, Dr. Sapolsky, Robert Sapolsky. And he actually studied baboons, and he made this documentary, National Geographic documentary, and it's called Stress, Portrait of a Killer. If you have an opportunity to watch it, he literally illuminates elements on stress and how it absolutely rears its ugly head, and how we have that immobilized self and we become zombied, if you will. And he does it in so many different formats. I should say the documentary does it in so many different formats. And the fact that he illuminated the baboons was phenomenal. I looked at it as, I'm a big elephant person. I was talking to Suzanne about it, and I adopt an elephant every year. And the stress that is impacted with their herds, especially when there's a father missing, the adolescent sons get very, very bad. And once they put a father back in, it calms things down and it relaxes everybody. So when you understand behavior of animals, you'll understand it's real stuff. Last thing, people ask me what my favorite thing is in terms of stress reduction. And I say lists. I am a big lister. I have created lists my whole life. I looked through my high school box at home and my parents' house, and there were lists in there. I make a list almost every morning. I still use a physical calendar, and my dean uses a physical calendar, because writing, there's something with that that just gives a really good base to all of us. This is me in my nutshell version, but you can also, it's who I am, it's what I practice. I absolutely believe in this topic, and if you want to reach out, by all means, please do so. Does anybody have any questions for
Thank
me?
you.
Oh my gosh, you're so welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Rodriguez-Kitkowski. And yes, if you have a few more minutes, we are getting close to the top of the hour, but it would be great if we could open this up to questions.
Chime in.
Question. I do have a
Certainly,
question.
this was a
Okay.
very outstanding presentation. I wondered if you translate some of this over to the organizational level, where you're dealing with an overall organization, and of course I suppose you could say in different organizations, there are probably different stress levels for different reasons on an overall basis. Certainly one of the problems a lot of colleges and universities have to deal with these days is enrollment problems, financial problems, and other factors. But can some of this be translated to an overall organizational level? And of course, if organizations don't really deal with or cope with problems, which sometimes it's easier not to, but if they don't, can you comment on that area?
Absolutely.
Looking at it from an organizational perspective and the health of an organization, and, dealing with stress, coping skills, all that.
Absolutely. And you know what, Gordon, that's such an important piece. This is not just individual. This isn't just animal behavior. This is behavior as a whole. And so when we look at an organization, the fundamentals of IO Psych, when you look at IO Psych and you do consultation, you're looking at the health of the organization. The health of the organization, absolutely, you've got to try and measure some of the stress levels that are going on, individual stress levels, and then systemic stress levels. So yes, the system, when we look at stress on a system, there are wonderful assessment tools out there to look at the stress on a system. And then once we look at that, we're able then to say, okay, what can we do? And not necessarily to fix, but what can we do to put some measures in place that can now rise to that level of awareness of all, so that we can then put other things in. And I'll give you an example. A QEP project for a university. I said to you at the very beginning, I was telling people that we're now instituting our QEP, and it's all about resilience. Why? Because we're looking at students with financial problems, all the psychosocial stressors. Do they have insurance? Do they have transportation? Do they have social support? Do they know how to write a paper even? Do they have resources? And so fundamentally, we're already seeing that system break down. So then when they get into Psych 1001 and they have to write a paper, guess what? They don't know what to do. And I'm getting a little bit away from the larger system, but the point being, we can absolutely apply it. And that's the beauty of IO Psych, is we look at that and how we can get into those systems. It's nice to be able to do that as well. It puts personality to the system itself and the organization itself. I do know for a fact that Chrysler used a lot of fundamentals of resiliency. And I only know that because I have a very good friend that does a lot of consultation for their leadership groups. So absolutely, it's a great thing to do.
Thank you for that question, Gordon. Are there any other questions? I do have a question.
Sure.
I was thinking about when you talked about don't bottle things up and how important it is to avoid doing that. And I was thinking about introverts versus extroverts, and how easy it is for an extrovert to talk to a friend and kind of let it out that way. What advice or tips do you have for an introvert to kind of let those emotions and feelings out?
One of the things that I've said to people that have a hard time talking, and I'll say because from a therapy stance, granted, how are they in therapy? And that introvertedness is really challenging for them at times. But one of the nice things is sitting in silence is not a bad thing. Sitting in silence is actually really critical. And as people learn about themselves and being comfortable in silence, they start to entertain what else is out there, potentially. This is where I will go back to resiliency. What else are they practicing in their flower, if you will? And when people are open to understanding, whatever personality they have, when they're open to understanding something's not working, and then they see, as an example, the resiliency flower and say, what can I do now in this area? Let me look at this area. So it's really kind of planting seeds so that they can take the time to reflect, slow down, and see where they want to walk next. This is walk, not run. Absolutely walk, not run when it comes to an introvert. Does that help a little bit?
Oh, yes, that's great. I think it fits perfectly what you said about using your own judgment about what fits for you might be different than for someone else.
Absolutely.
Do we have any other questions? I think everyone is able to unmute themselves. And I see some notes in the chat box. Dominic Ross says, thank you so much for the presenting this very detailed information. Kelly Yates says, great information. I loved the examples you provided.
Thank you so much, you guys. I want to say thank you as well. This is, again, a topic near and dear to me. Very important, I think, in our higher ed world. Very important for our students, and they need to know we're here for them, but also very important for ourselves. If we are not practicing some of this, we're not going to be healthy. And we're allowed to be a little messed up, don't get me wrong, but we've got to also be healthy. So good stuff. Thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you again for speaking. What a useful and timely topic. I know that I'm going to be putting this information to use in my own life. And I would just like to tell our guests to stay tuned with Pi Gamma Mu, and we'll be posting about our next event coming up in a few months. And I guess we will close the meeting for today. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Great meeting,
Thank you.
great presentation.